So our next speaker is Arthur Schwarz. He is actually going to be coming up and talking for about 30 minutes, discussing the font business and how hopefully we can fix it, but I don't think it's fixable in one talk. And then he will have some Q&A at the end. And so please, he has about 15 minutes for Q&A. Take advantage of this, because how often do you get to ask these kind of questions? Also, he will be available afterwards. So take some, you can find him in the audience. So please come down, find a seat. We are starting on time because we want to make sure our speakers have enough time to answer those questions. Thank you. Arthur.
I'm actually not going to use this. Is this one working? Yeah, sure, cool. So, let's start this. I'm just going to wait for the last people entering the room to be sit. Cool. Ouais. Non, ça va, je préfère les boutons. So, hello everyone. My name is Arthur Schwarz. I'm a designer and chief happiness at ATypI. ATypI is a type foundry founded in 2014 by Jean-Baptiste Levé. There are 8 employees, and it's the largest company in France in this field. The average age is 28 years old, and next year we'll be celebrating our 10-year anniversary. So, thank you. Thank you, thank you. This is the one to thank a lot, Jean-Baptiste. So, the font business is broken. Can we fix it? Sure, sure we can. Well, thank you very much. Before moving on to the Q&A, I just want to thank Marta, Natalia, Tamie, and Marion for making this event happen. I also want to tell you about the closing party tomorrow that ATypI is supporting. It's going to be good food, good drinks, nice place, nice people. Please join. It's going to be at Café A, 148 Rue du Faubourg Saint-Martin, in the 10th. Sorry for non-French speakers. 148 Rue du... Well, yeah, whatever. From 8 to 2 a.m. And now, back to the conference. So, to talk to you about the font business, I'm just going to start with a few definitions. And, well, I'm sure you all know what a font is, but I just wish to make things even clearer. So I'm going to go into the details and be as precise as a lawyer could about the meaning of a font, even though I'm not a lawyer, so this conversation is not privileged or anything. So let's start by stating the obvious. Fonts are softwares. Moreover, fonts are sold as softwares, and when it's true for the US, this is a bit less true for Europe. I'm going to get to that a bit later. Now, a software can be described differently. For example, in the US, a font is only a software and nothing else. It's copyrighted as a software and not as an artwork. While it is a software in the US, in China, it makes more sense that it is a database because their font have at least 30,000 glyphs, so this is what makes way more sense. Here you can see an example of the certificate of registration for the Stratos font. And still, from a legal point of view, in France and in most EU countries, fonts are also a drawing. This is an example of a legal document stating that the font enfantine, one of the ATypI's fonts, is a drawing. It is also an artwork. It's an artistic creation embodying its author's personality. Yeah, that's a frame of Mona Lisa in Louvre. If you didn't have the chance to go there, it's kind of good looking, pretty small. And even from a legal point of view, still, a font is an artwork. This is true for France, most EU countries. I know it's true for Germany. I only have a legal document stating this for France, but you can trust me on this. This is true for Germany too. It is also a mark, so we protect the name as a trademark. For example, Panorama is a trademark of ATypI, and that means that nobody can use that name for naming another font. And So it's a community mark, or in the US, a trademark, and even more, this would be even more right to say that it's a brand. And here you can see the certificate of registration for the Kessler font in the US. And it works zone by zone and country by country, which means that this has been, we acquired the right for this name in the US, but that doesn't mean we have this name for the rest of the world, just with this certificate. Now, the same kind of document as the previous one, except it's for China. That's true, it's a second example. I'm just showing it because it's super goddamn good looking. Please enjoy it, it's pretty rare. Spending money should be easy. When it comes to fonts, it's usually a bit difficult, or at least not fun. And moreover, no foundry wants to miss a sale because of the process was too long or too tedious, too difficult, or whatever. And missing a sale could just be for the client to buy the wrong license, which could be leading to some fun chit-chats with lawyers and cool people. Here as an example is the first software license contract ever sold, and it was by IBM in 1969. So let's go back to the question, what is sold? Well, what is sold is an authorization of use and not a title of ownership. In other words, we sell a right to use a font, and that is called a license. And now you may be wondering, what is a license? Well, that was my next question. What is a license? And I'm going to clear this out. So first of all, a license is a contract. And according to the 2018 Extensive Survey, 80% of users do not read the licenses. 78% of them still do not understand the terms of the contract after reading them. And that is 95.6% of font users who don't read or understand the contracts. So that can be a contract, can be between two parties, or sometimes even more. There can be the buyer, the subcontractor, like a freelance designer, and most and foremost, the end client. One important thing from the client point of view is that doubt provides legal insecurity. And no one wants to feel insecure, right, Mom? No one. So, font license agreements are meant to be read by lawyers and not by users who probably won't read them, as I said earlier. And users, they've been trained that they don't need to read software licenses since they can't easily do things they should not do. For instance, when you use a trial version of an app, a game, or a software, it's going to have limitations. And users, they can do more without purchasing. However, with fonts, users can do things they're not supposed to do without cracking the software. And the users, they don't realize this. So, now we're going to have a look at parts of ULAs to see some curious clauses, which are in most cases difficult to apply. Some can be subject to interpretation, and some completely unenforceable. With a well-written contract, the purpose is that the user is not going to do things they're not supposed to do. And more importantly, that they pay the right price. So, do not use the font for large volume commercial projects of over 250,000 prints or static digital images. That's an extract from a ULA under Austrian jurisdiction. So, yeah, well, how can you know how many prints you're going to do with your printer? Like, how can you track this? I mean, if it would have been like maybe 1 or 2 or 3, maybe 4, even maybe 5 prints, you can track it. But more than that, I'm not sure it's doable. You may not use the font for the creation of logos or identities, including movie titles. So I was reading this ULA, then I went to see the different license offered by this foundry, and I was surprised that there was no logo license available. So I was wondering if it was a statement or maybe they just hate logos, any inputs is kind of welcome. Yeah, this one is kind of long, but still, it's amazing. You are not granted any right to use the licensed software in any application controlling aircraft or other modes of human mass transportation, nuclear or chemical facilities, life support systems, implantable medical equipment, motor vehicles, weaponry systems, or any similar scenario, collectively high-risk use. Well, that's limitations, and at least this Foundry has set this limitation in case there is a problem, if their fonts are installed on a device in a nuclear power plant, and many other dangerous stuff. Just a little story time about something that's kind of related to this. It was pretty unbelievable. And I apologize for that. I don't have the source for it, but if you know the story, please send me an email or slide in my DM just to tell me, because that's pretty amazing. So it's a US battleship that remained in port because the computers on board would not boot, and because the control computers loaded a corrupted version of Times New Roman. Yep. Yeah. You can have peace of mind knowing that you are legally protected from any indemnity. So to me, that sounds like I can do bad things, like wrong things, like, I don't know, committing crimes without getting any pursuit, as I would be legally protected from any indemnity. But please don't do any crime. Crime is wrong. Okay. The penalty for breach of the terms and conditions of this ULA is always at least $4,000 US. Well, that sounds kind of a trap. Let's say the client made an honest mistake, as they all usually are, you know. They should pay the right price, the price for the license. That's fair enough. But here, it's plus $4,000 for just an honest mistake. That's a lot for buying maybe the wrong license. Let's say you wanted to purchase a $70 desktop license for a single user, and you just bought the web license, but you use it for prints. Well, you're in trouble now. You better sell a lot of books. The use of font software in any sexist context is prohibited. Well, this one is subject to interpretation. I'll be careful with that one, as I'm not saying it's bad. On the opposite, it's a very noble cause. We all have an idea of what sexist means, of course, but the only person able to tell if something is sexist or not from a legal point of view is a judge. And that will be legal until the judge says so. It is prohibited to use the fonts in any context, actively working against nature conservation. I'll be careful with that one, as I'm not saying it's bad. On the opposite, it's a very noble cause. The thing is, it's complicated to define what is against nature conservation, still from a legal point of view. Here, it's the difference between legal and legitimate. Oh, cool. Single user license. The fonts may be used on up to 5 CPUs at your site. So, to me, that looks like a poorly written or obsolete contract. Do you know how many CPUs there is in this computer right here? It's probably at least 8. That's 3 too many. So by just purchasing this license, you already cannot use it legally. So I guess purchasing this license doesn't mean you can use it. The licensee has expressly permitted the designer to complete the purchase on their behalf. While some try to regulate the relationship between the designers and the client, in this case, in this situation, what would an agency do? It's not said. And in the end, the client, the one who's going to pay and use the font, benefit from the design, he definitely won't like this kind of agreement. Who's going to let a third party agree on their behalf that, yeah, I haven't read this, I agree to it? Sure. All right, now a little part to query customer data that are declarative. Here it's an example for some web licenses. And to provide with a quote for the license, some ask for the number of unique visitors on their website, or the number of clicks on their website, or even the page views. And these are just some metrics that are kind of complicated to provide to your favorite type foundry in town. It's not the most easiest thing to provide. Still in this part about desktop licenses now. So we saw the example with the CPUs earlier. There's also the number of users. But what if you hire someone more and then you need another license you need to regulate all the time? Or it can be the number of devices. What is a device? I mean, I know that a computer is a device, my phone is a device, my dishwasher is the device, so can I install my font on my dishwasher? That's not too precise for me. And yeah, this one. So license fee for a, and then you got to put your number here, annual revenue company or product. It's pretty simple, actually. You just know how much money you make, and just tell the foundry how much you make, and then you get your code. It's as easy as this. But I'm pretty sure that clients, they don't want to share their annual revenue. I might be wrong, but that's my guess. And this one, my all-time favorite. The only thing asked is the number of licenses. No questions asked. What do you want to do with it? No, I just need to know how many. Actually, it can be that easy to buy a font. A license, I'm sorry. Now, to me, I think it's important to be honest and trustable as a business. I thought it would be the case for everybody, but hey, let's find out. So let's move on with something slightly different, but still related to the ULA with a little advertising and marketing chapter. So I was on Instagram and I saw an ad, maybe you did too. So this is 27 fonts families for just 27 euros. I don't know, to me that feels wrong. Maybe that's the price, I don't know. And guess what's hidden behind this little asterisk? Yes, that's right, trial fonts, isn't it great? Not sure. You thought you could use them for actual projects. Well, no, it's only for personal and testing usage. Now another one. I mean, maybe the layout rings a bell. So that's a trade offer. The Foundry received, this time it's a little more expensive, $29. And you receive like thousands of fonts, mockups, templates, whatever. But here we go again. It's basically paying for trials. Now, a very good example of a bad provider, plus it happens that it's the largest typography website in the world. So the fonts presented on this website are their author's property and are either freeware, shareware, demo versions, or public domain. The license mentioned above the download button is just an indication. Please look at the README files in the archives or check the indicated author's website for details and contact him, her, if in doubt. If no author license is indicated, that's because we don't have information. That doesn't mean it's free. So it looks free. You can get the font for free without any payment, any registration, and you never need to agree to anything. Also, the typos in this text are original. Now let's have a look at honest attempts to make things more understandable. So this diagram, it's a real public document from an active type foundry. It just explains what license should be bought. So you start from the top, then you answer some yes or no questions, and in the end, you should be able to know what license you need. So it is honest, it is an attempt. I'm not sure it makes things easier to understand, at least to me. I may be wrong, that's just my opinion. Now, I'm not saying that it has to go that far, but Monotype made a video explaining what licensing is. It's a few minutes, it's pretty well explained. It's well done. Or some others, they go with a didactic guide, taking the customer by the hand and making sure they don't get lost. Just answer a few questions, and then you know what to buy. And now that we have seen a few examples of ULA with the slightly tricky clauses, I hope no one got hurt. That was not my intention. We're going to have a look at some improvements. So that's an extract from a ULA under the Swiss jurisdiction. Here at Foundry Name, we have a slightly different approach to font licensing from what you might be used to. We believe that font licenses should be owned and paid for by the client for whom the fonts are being used, not that by the designers working for them, and that the value brought by fonts grows with the size of the client. With these two principles in mind, we base our prices on the total number of people working for the client, not the size of the design agency they hire, not the number of people in their design department, and not the number of people who use the fonts. You can read more about our philosophy here. Sorry for the link, it's not in the description. So this one explains how their whole licensing works, with a hint on the value brought by a font to your brand. It's pretty easy to understand and not too long to read when not giving a conference. So it is understood that the user in this agreement is the actual end user. If you are intending to procure a license on behalf of another, for example, if an independent contractor wants to procure a license for work you're doing for a company, the license must be in the same name of the company, and your use would be governed by a third-party addendum. This is pretty similar to the previous one, it's just a bit more formal, but the same philosophy applies here. This is a single brand license, meaning that this agreement permits your use of the font solely in connection with the public display and promotion of your business operated under the U brand and for no other brand, sub-brand, trademark, business, or purpose that may be owned or operated by you or your affiliated or subsidiaries. What this means is that if you are a company that has subsidiaries that operate under different brands or trademarks, you will need a separate license for each subsidiary. Again, another similar example with difference on being very strict that the license is for a single brand or company. Now let's have a look at what new models could look like. And which one of them, it's the company size. We like to refer them as the next generation contracts. They're company size based, brand based, and with verifiable metrics. There is no download, page views, click views, or whatever. It's just a single metric we ask. And the most important thing, I think, is that the clients, they tend to understand more quickly this kind of contract. With this kind of licenses, you are counting according to the size of the company. You can provide modern licensing options like social media licenses, merchandising, packaging, signage, even more. You can share the fonts with all the employees, which means that if someone at the accounting department, if for some reason he needs the font, he has the right to use it. And it's just another creative assets that you can pass around. So being a good customer is precious. And a good customer is a paying customer. And a paying customer is what? Yes. Pressure is not only on the Foundry, but also on the customer. To be a good Foundry customer, we like them to be transparent about the use. Please name the client, the use of the font, and also, one important thing, know how to negotiate. For example, don't ask for a discount straightforward. It's never going to work. Or you can provide a counterpart in that case, let's say for maybe a time-limited license. And if the client has limited budget, well, they'll get a limited license. And if they have an unlimited budget, well, tell me who they are. Perspectives, they call for more caution. 32% of creatives admitted to finding font copy online during their creative freelancing. Well, to me, that sounds more like 100%, but sure, that's from the same old extensive survey 2018. The perspectives call for more caution. Is it towards a unification of contracts? No. Is it towards a simplification of contracts? No. Is it towards a decrease in control? No. And is it towards a decrease in litigation? No, we know that there's a tendency to litigation because of numerous abuses. And here are just an example of several abuses from client. I'm air quoting them because they didn't pay, so I'm not sure we can call them clients, but yeah. It's just large company buying no license, using the fonts just because they wanted to, they didn't know. And now the maybe most important thing of this conference are the 10 commandments of licensing. Good licensing is good business. And that was the only one, actually. Thank you very much for your attention.
At this time, we're going to open this up for questions. I do have to have a help, if we could, because we're going to run all the questions through the mics. So please raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll bring a mic to you.
Remember, I'm no lawyer.
But he does play one on TV. Questions? Nadine.
Hi, thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. Is it perpetual or annual, the license model? That's one. And two, how do you differentiate between a branding typeface that's being used across all brand signals for many, many years in pricing model versus a display typeface used in a campaign on a Christmas card?
I'm sorry, as I didn't quite catch your question. It was quite long.
Nike has its own branding typeface. It uses it everywhere. But then for a specific Christmas launch, they have a Christmas card that they are going to send in one country to some of their clients. How would you price that differently in terms of usage? And if we don't differentiate the price between a display typeface used for one campaign versus a branding typeface used for everything, how does that impact the licensing of the many display typefaces a large company would normally use? Thank you.
So about the pricing of such a things, the simplest answer is just I wouldn't do that because it's not my job at Production Type. You thought you were going to get a hint? No, I'm kidding. I really don't do that.
Maybe the question is there a difference between large production and obviously a large company using it to send out what we call personal correspondence? But it is marketing, remember.
Yeah, sure. I think it's very important to make a difference between companies regarding their size. To me, it's obvious that Nike should pay more than a small agency with a few designers. This is why, to me, the company size model based on the number of employees makes more sense, since maybe Nike could be like, oh, for a campaign, we're going to use a font. We're just going to buy a single user license because we're just going to have one graphic designer. But hey, Nike is 70,000 employees. I think they should still pay more than a small agency.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, but like Nadine said yesterday, when you start Instagram with 8 employees and you grow super fast, what do? Do you check every year how big the company grow? Instagram was the best example, she said. She mentioned it.
So I understand. So depending on the EULAs, usually it's asked for the client to tell, hey, we have more employees now, we need to regulate and need to buy another license. Or maybe they can have fewer employees and they will have a reduced price sometimes.
I do have a question, a follow-up for that. It's me.
Hi.
Do you follow up with your companies to make sure that they are up to date on all their EULAs? Or is that just too much work? So, for example, she's talking about a company that's grown, and that company is very well known. So we know they grow. But, for example, what if it's an under-the-radar company? Is that something that we should all start to consider, that we should monitor our clients to see if they are growing?
I mean, that's a strategy. Like, you can choose to track your clients and to try to know if they grow, if you have the time. But time is money and it costs money, so is it worth it? It depends on the company you're working with or for. So I would say it depends on each and every case.
Questions? Yes. Oh.
Thank you. I was wondering about the definition of employees. So would that be fully employed, full-time employees, part-time employees, contractors, freelancers, and in the UK, contractors on zero-hour contracts?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it depends on...
In the case like Uber, for example, would you count the employees of Uber or the drivers as well? Thank you.
Thank you. So it depends on every ULA. I'm just going to say in general, usually it's every employee, including their part-time staff, interns, and everyone. And in the case of Uber, I'm not aware of how this whole business works. That would be kind of complicated. Maybe you know how to do that.
I would pick a different license.
Yeah, I know.
I'm actually going to ask one more question. Sorry, I have so many questions today. So I'm actually going to have you look at your EULAs and how every EULA is different, and it should be different because we have so many individual foundries here and so many different designers. In your own opinion, give us 3 things that each EULA should carry as a universal to help in some sort of protection.
Even some things I dislike.
Not dislike, some things you like.
Oh,
that you
some things I like.
I want something that you like, and I want you to talk about specifically top 3. What do you think should be in every EULA? Why? Done.
So I think one very important thing is like one of the I think it was the first example I show you was explaining how it works pretty simple. And since we know users are not reading EULA, having like small paragraphs and small things like this, it helps, and maybe people will read them. So I think make things the simpler, it's the best. Secondly, having a license for every use leads to less doubt when you're purchasing, because sometimes it's not precise. With the desktop license, can you print books? Sometimes you need to buy a book license, it happens. Or you can even use it on the web sometimes, because there's just some very general license, so I need just to be clear about all the license you're providing. And another one, a third one. You know, that's a tricky question. Like a top 3 like this, spontaneously? Top 3. Having a good pricing range, I think is good.
Okay. Any other questions? I'm going to let him off the hook, if so. Please stay tuned for our next talk, and I'll let you have a little bit of a break. We have about...
I have a question.
Oh, please.
If that's okay.
Yes.
Hi. Question. Tone and the way that we describe things in language. I wonder if you could speak to how we can maybe make the EULA more human, more humanize, even the conversation right now. Kind of, I'm not really sure if we're having a conversation yet, but all to say that tone has such a huge amount to do with what we understand and how we relate to it or respect it. So I wonder if you could speak to that. Thanks.
If I will be speaking tonight? Sorry, I didn't catch that one.
How can a EULA be more respectful to humans?
Respecting the law. Law is good.
Also humans? Yeah,
Hum-
humans?
Humans, they rule. I love them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Please stay tuned for the next talk.